Hey everyone, this is Cody, and today on AstroBlender I'm going to be reviewing the Celestron 8-inch RASA. Now the 8-inch RASA is a f2 system, so it has a 400mm focal length and the aperture is 200mm. So that means this telescope is really fast and can produce images really quickly, which is really nice for people like me that don't have a ton of time, or if you're just trying to produce a very rich image. If you take 5 or 10 minute exposures on the RASA, you're going to be getting so much data. So that's really the huge benefit of using a system that's this fast, is that you just get really fast images. Now there's also some drawbacks, and we'll talk about that as well. No optical system is perfect, so yeah, this is really going to be a full review of the RASA, talk a little bit about its weight. It's 17, 18 pounds, so it is a little bit on the heavier side of things without any accessories. But yeah, we'll pretty much cover everything here. So it might be a little long today, but I want to make sure I get all my thoughts in on this telescope. Now most of you that follow me will know I'm a big fan of the RASA 8, or just the RASA design in general. And a lot of that is due to its history. So this telescope actually kind of is an evolved Schmidt camera or Schmidt telescope. And what that was is it was a tool for researchers that would look at wide field areas of the sky, commonly used in sky surveys, so looking at comets or trying to find asteroids, just a lot of wide field surveys. The Schmidt camera though, basically the focal plane was on the inside of the telescope tube rather than the outside. So astronomers in their observatories would actually have to insert film into the center of the tube. There'd be a little cutout on the side and you have to stick it in there, and the prime focus would be found right here, and you get some really good results. A lot of good research and good astronomy was done with the Schmidt camera, but it's just not the best design for the average everyday astronomer. Especially nowadays, we really like to see really pretty pictures with our CCD or our CMOS style cameras. So what Celestron did was really clever. They basically had the light bounce off this primary mirror like normal, but instead of having the prime focus fall inside the tube, they have it fall outside of the tube so that your camera is on the outside where it's very easily accessible. So the light comes down, hits the primary mirror, and then it comes up, and instead of hitting this secondary up here, it hits a series of lenses which correct the light and give you a very nice large imaging circle. Another benefit of this design is it also makes attaching filters very easy, so you can filter out the light that you want. So in general, the RASA system is kind of a really neat heritage design from the original Schmidt camera or Schmidt telescope. And Celestron has actually published a paper on the design of the RASA system, and I highly encourage you to read it. It's really informative and it's really good read. But just this design is very, very cool, how they were able to take that original Schmidt camera design with the film in the center of the tube and actually make the prime focus on the outside of the tube. Now because the Rowe-Ackermann-Schmidt astrograph, or RASA, is essentially a heavily upgraded modern Schmidt camera design, or Schmidt telescope design that puts that camera outside the tube, what's really cool about it is it still fulfills the same niche as the Schmidt telescope did. So it's really good for wide field survey work with a really fast speed, so you can get those photons just very, very quickly. And honestly, the whole RASA design, the 8-inch RASA, the 11-inch RASA, or even the 14-inch RASA, are very good for research still. So I primarily use mine for astrophotography, but those that have like the 14-inch or the 360mm RASA can do some really good survey work. So just the design and the history of this instrument is really neat. Now I'll also say it's a little unfair to just simply call this an evolved Schmidt telescope, because David Rowe and Mark Ackerman and the engineers over at Celestron put a substantial amount of work into perfecting this system. They're even able to use the same corrector plate that their Schmidt Cassegrain telescopes use, so it's even easier to manufacture that way. So some substantial innovation went into this design, and definitely I have to give credit where credit's due. Now, as I mentioned, one of the main benefits of having the prime focus lie outside of the tube is that you can use filters and filter drawers relatively easily. So I have my ZWO ASI 183 MC Pro camera mounted here, and I'll talk about why I use this camera specifically in a second. But I also use the IDAS filter drawer and an IDAS NBZ filter for imaging nebulae. So it's just a really easy system. Once you get it all set up, you're pretty much good to go. Now there are a couple drawbacks to the RASA design, as any telescope has. No telescope is a perfect system. This telescope, compared to like a wide field refractor, is pretty heavy. So if you're using like a 30-pound payload capacity mount like the Advanced VX or another brand, I would recommend having nothing on it but the RASA itself. Now, that's possible because you actually don't need an autoguider. Because the system is so fast, you actually can just take like 30-second or 1-minute exposures and still produce an amazing image. So really, if you're going to use it on a lightweight mount, just use the tube itself. I probably wouldn't use anything else. Another tricky thing is the focuser. Now on any system that has a focal ratio of f2, the focus plane is going to be so small that you can easily blow through it just by turning the focuser one way or the other. Like you'll go right through it. So before I had an automatic focuser, I would just turn this focus knob just ever so slightly and I'd still blow right through the focus. So focusing is really tricky, and you get the hang of it. Like eventually I'd kind of start to just tap it and flick it a little bit until I got it just to be perfect. But the addition of an automatic focuser, whether that's Celestron or ZWO, really helps. I can't emphasize that enough. So that is one recommended accessory that I have, is an automatic focuser. But it is one of the drawbacks, but that is, again, just the nature of being at f2, is your focus plane is really narrow. So it's not, you know, a flaw with the RASA itself, it's just the design of being at f2. Another thing you're going to watch for in this design is with the camera on the outside of the tube, you're going to see some weird diffraction spikes in your images if your chords aren't at nice angles to each other. So I'm actually going to show you my solution for that here. So the way I got around this chord diffraction issue is I just took a standard 8-inch Celestron Schmidt-Cassegrain dew shield and I cut out notches on my own and then taped them with electric tape. So this is for the wide CGE rail here. This is a small little notch for the wire, and then I cut out a little strip here for the power cord, and then I also cut the bottom for that wider rail as well. So I just made several more cuts here, and this not only serves as a dew shield, it also helps, you know, prevent extra light from getting into the telescope tube, and it helps with my wire situation. So it works out really nicely. Now there is a method to minimize diffraction in the RASA, and that's to use a cable router. Now this is the way you want to go if you are not a fan of diffraction spikes. So basically all this is a 3D printed part that attaches to the outer cell here, and the wires, what happens is they follow this spherical path to the outside of the corrector plate and then out. And that's going to minimize the diffraction you see in your images, really clean them up and make them look nice. So this is also a really good method to go with if you are not a fan of diffraction spikes. So what kind of cameras can you use on the RASA 8? Well, it's actually required that you use a deep sky camera. And the reason for that is the back focus on this system is only 25 millimeters. And on a normal DSLR camera, those typically have about 44 or 45 millimeters of back focus. So they're way beyond that and you can't use them. Additionally, the body of a DSLR is really wide, so it blocks a lot of that light path. So that's, you know, not a good thing either. So you really want a cylindrical deep sky camera type body. Now, I guess you could use a mirrorless camera because those newer DSLRs that are mirrorless do have lower back focus requirements, but again, you're still going to be having the body of that DSLR intrude into the light path, and you really don't want to do that. Additionally, most DSLRs have APS-C or normal full-size sensors, and those aren't the best in the RASA 8. The imaging circle is big, but as you increase your sensor size to about APS-C, you'll start to see maybe some defects or tilt at the edges that become a problem. So we'll discuss this a little bit later, but the point is you're going to want to use a deep sky camera because those have the back focus clearance that you need. I'm not going to get terribly into it in this video. I do have a separate video that discussed the back focus requirements on the RASA 8, so I'll put that in the description below and you can check that out if you want to see it. One other thing about the RASA that's really nice is since there's nothing really going on in the back end, you might as well include a cooling fan, and that's exactly what Celestron did. So this is a 12-volt maglev fan. It cools down the telescope really quick to get it to ambient temperature. What I like to do is just remove my power cord from my ASI Air Pro and plug it in here before I get started. That'll turn it on and get things going. I leave it for about 30 minutes to an hour, pull it out, and then just pop it back in my Air Pro. So makes things really easy. Also, you have really easy access to the focuser to do things here as well without running into filter wheels or anything like that. So just having the back end free is also really nice. One thing that's also really nice about the RASA design is because there's so much weight in the lenses and in the corrector plate here at the front and the primary mirror at the back, it actually balances really nicely. It's pretty well centered in your dovetail. So balancing the RASA is actually pretty easy. You don't really have to worry so much about hitting your tripod legs when things are moving around because you don't really have a lot of the telescope extending one way or the other. So it works out really nicely that way too. Alright, so let's talk about cameras just a little bit more here and why I picked the cameras I did. So this is the ZWO ASI 183 MC Pro. It has a 1-inch sensor on it, which is actually pretty small, given that the imaging circle on the RASA is quite a bit bigger than what this sensor can cover. So why exactly did I go with this camera? And the main reason is because it has such small pixel sizes. The pixels in this camera are 2.4 by 2.4 microns in size, which is actually really small. Even for a 1-inch sensor, having 2.4 micron pixel sizes is going to give you a lot of megapixels. This camera has approximately 20 megapixels, which is really nice because then you can blow up your images pretty big. If you get a really nice image, you can put a poster on the wall and kind of take pride in your work that way. Now, the reason you want small pixel sizes when you're using the RASA 8 is because of sampling. Now, ideal conditions, maybe a good night sky, you're going to want to be shooting with a resolution probably between about 1 and 2 arc seconds. Now, if you're using really large pixel sizes like 4 or above, you're actually going to be undersampling the telescope quite a bit, which means you're not going to have a lot of pixels on your stars, making your stars look a little bit boxy if you zoom in on them. So having proper sampling is really nice. So in general, the lower the focal length of your optical system, you're going to want smaller pixel sizes so that the resolution is still good. So in this case, with the ZWO 183 MC Pro, those 2.4 micron pixel sizes and the 400 millimeter focal length of the RASA 8 gives me a resolution of about 1.24 arc seconds per pixel, which is just about perfect and all my stars are nice and round. Now, I do lose some of the field of view that the RASA 8 can provide, but for me it's a nice trade-off, and it actually makes imaging a little bit easier. Now, no review is complete without actually showing you some evidence, right? Well, if you've been following me on Instagram at AstroBlender for about the last year or so, almost every single image I've taken has been with the RASA 8. I mean, I just think this is such a phenomenal telescope and I absolutely love it. And I mean, really, it is my go-to. So I have really high opinions of it. You can take, a 5-minute exposure and get a really rich image. You can take 1-minute exposures and get a good image. 30 seconds, really, I mean, the possibilities are endless when you're imaging at f2. But I just thought I'd show you a quick little slideshow of the images I've been able to produce with this, just to give you an idea of what you can accomplish with an f2 telescope. Sensor makes imaging on the RASA 8 easier because you're not going to see the effects of the off-axis light as much. So when you use a bigger sensor, like an APS crop size sensor on this telescope, you're going to see the edges of the field. You might see some elongated stars or some stretching. And the reason for that is on an f2 system, your collimation is really critical. And even if it's off slightly, you're going to notice it with the wider field of view that you have. So my 1-inch sensor, since it's really small, pretty much all the light is on axis. So I'm not really seeing the effects of those defects on the edges. But the bigger your sensor, the easier it is to see those defects and the more critical your collimation is. Now that's not to say you can't take a great picture with an APS crop on the RASA. I've seen it done with the 071 MC Pro. Some people have done some really good work using that sensor size. It's just the collimation is more critical. So with my 1-inch sensor, not only is my image properly sampled with those small pixel sizes, but I also don't see those image defects as much as I would with a bigger sensor. The trade-off though is I don't get as big of a field of view. Now I will say that undersampling is not as big of an issue as you think it would be. So this is the ZWO ASI 294 MC Pro, and I've actually taken a lot of images through the RASA with this camera as well. And this camera gives 4.63 micron pixel sizes, so it is undersampled in the RASA 8, but unless you're really zooming in on those stars, you really don't notice all that much. So I'll show a couple pictures here that I have taken with this camera, and they still look pretty good. So my recommendation, if you can work with it, go with the smaller 183 MC Pro to get those small pixel sizes, especially if you can go with the monochrome version. If you can do like S203 and H alpha imaging with the 183 MC Pro, you can produce some amazing results very quickly on the RASA. Alright, so let's talk filters in the RASA 8. Now, I have two favorites, and the first is the IDAS NBZ. This is a nebula booster filter. It's a dual band oxygen-3 hydrogen alpha filter, and each band pass is 10 nanometers wide. This does a really great job on emission nebula and planetary nebula, and actually it can make a really good luminance filter as well if you're using monochrome data. I use the IDAS filter drawer and then the RASA specific filter sliders, and they just slide right in there. And it's a really easy to use filter with a color camera. Produce an image honestly very easily in an hour. You can produce a great image with the RASA with just an hour of data. So for narrowband filters and a color camera, I highly recommend the IDAS NBZ. My other favorite filter to use is the Celestron RASA 8 light pollution filter. Now this is specifically meant for this telescope. It sits in a proprietary cell and it does an amazing job. This is what I used initially with my RASA all the time before I went into narrowband imaging, and still when I take broadband images, this is the go-to filter. It really does an amazing job cutting down on the street lamp light pollution, you know, your neighbor's porch lights, whatever, it cuts right through it. This filter is also made by Astrodon for Celestron, and Astrodon is one of the best filter companies in the world, so you know you're getting extremely good quality out of this filter. The RASA 8 light pollution filter actually sits inside the cell just above the lens element. So to install it, it's actually really easy. I'm just going to remove my, my filter drawer here. And that reveals just the normal T-threads for attaching a camera. Now you want to be really careful not to touch your corrector plate, and then you're just going to remove the retaining ring. Alright, so with the retaining ring removed, I've now exposed that front lens element, and I'm ready to install the light pollution filter into that cell. So I'm just going to get it started. You just want to be very careful not to touch the lens, the filter, or the corrector plate when you do this. So patience really is key. Alright, so there we go. And what's really cool about this is this filter replaces the clear piece of glass that comes with the Celestron RASA. So it's not like the filter is an add-on or anything, it's an integral part of the system. So this unique design, this proprietary cell for this filter really is designed for the RASA, and it works very well. Now again, I am going to make another plug for my Back Focus 101 video on the Celestron RASA 8 because it's not quite as simple as just attaching a camera. You do need to get that correct back focus. So if you haven't seen that and you have questions, make sure to check that out. Now before I conclude here, I just want to share my final thoughts on the Celestron RASA 8. And I think it really takes experience to review a telescope. You can't just own a scope for 3 weeks and review it. I've been using this telescope night in and night out for the last year, and I have tons of experience with it, and I really feel like I know this telescope now, and it is such a great, fun optic. The very first night I was able to produce an image of the North America Nebula, and I was kind of intimidated by the RASA at first, but after that first night, everything worked out great and I was off to the races. And it's just a really ingenious design. Not only do you get those quick images, but they're also very high resolution because of that 8-inch mirror, so you're getting more resolution than you would a refractor. The other really nice thing is the weight balances out really nicely because everything is distributed pretty equally. So in general, the telescope is actually fairly simple to use and has a variety of methods for mounting filters to it. So the RASA 8 is really a champion astrophotography telescope. You cannot use it visually, and yeah, it's capable of producing some remarkable results. And with those higher level RASAs, you can even get into some serious research with them as well. Alright everyone, well that is my review of the amazing Celestron RASA 8. If you're looking to produce images in no time at all that have really nice fields of view and are really bright and beautiful, this is the telescope for you. I have had nothing but good experiences with my RASA, so that's pretty much all there is to it. So as always, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great day and clear skies.